Hi, everybody. This is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And I'm really excited for our discussion today. This is our free monthly Zoom class that we hold for members of our free Facebook group. The free Facebook group is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And those of you who are watching from the very beginning here are either here with me live already, or you are watching the replay somewhere. So I'm going to just make a couple of announcements, get those over with as we have a few more people joining live. Okay, so that's why I'm doing it that way. So as I mentioned, this is a live class on Zoom. So this is a little bit different. So those of you who are joining on my YouTube channel, watching the replay, this is a little bit different than like a teaching video on YouTube. This is more laid back. I purposely don't take the time to edit these because I would rather spend my time helping people. I want to be able to teach this content and then go on and teach another class and help clients rather than sitting for hours editing out, whatever, making the video look all slick and shiny, because that's not my style. So this is a more relaxed environment. I am going to be going over my notes quite a bit today. There's a lot that I don't want to forget, so you're going to see me looking down. Today's topic is illness caused by or worsened by negative spiritual interference. So we're going to get into all the ins and outs of that. But let's just get all the announcements over with so we don't even have to think about it, and then we can get into our really fascinating topic. So for those of you who have been following me for a while, or if you're new to my content, either way, you can get a lot more information if you visit my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And there's in the menu bar, there's a little section where you can click Work with Maya. And that's the best place that you can go to see like a whole list of all the different options. So there's a lot of different ways that you can receive support, from free to premium stuff. Speaking of that, one more little final tidbit here before we get into our topic. It is October 2023. October is my birthday month, and I decided to officially reopen enrollment for my flagship program, which is called Spiritual Empowerment Academy. It is an amazing group. It is specifically intended for anyone who's struggling with managing their energy or struggling with any type of negative spiritual interference, whether it's a psychic attack, excuse me, negative energies, and entities. Ancestral, sorry for slurping there. I was trying to hurry and I made a slurping sound. Ancestral curses. A lot of us have ancestral issues. All those things we work through together in the program, because if you're someone who's been, let's say, going through my free content, and let's say you've been reading my books, that has got, if your issues are pretty serious or complicated, and you've been doing a great job of following the advice in my books, let's say, that's only going to get you so far. And a lot of people, they kind of hit a point where the content in the books is great. It's going to be enough for a lot of people, but for some people, they're going to need the mentoring. So that's what the Academy is for. You can find that at psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Click on Work with Maya, and you'll see it there, as well as a few other places. So enough of all of that. couple other tidbits. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary YouTube channel. Lastly, this class is free to members of our Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. It's free for all of you who are here live, and the replay will be up for a week within the Facebook group. But after that, it goes away, and the only way you can access it is by signing up for my video vault. And you can find that on my website as well under Work with Maya. So if you want to have long-term access to all the free stuff, that's where you'll go. Okay, lots of announcements. Let's get into it. So we've been kind of feeling our way with this Zoom content for a few months now. We used to do this on Facebook Live. So I want to start off by saying I would like to encourage those of you who are here live to use the chat option. And you can say hi, you can ask questions, you can share your own perspective, because this is not just me as a talking head sharing information. I mean, yeah, you're here because you want to hear my perspective, because I've worked in this field for a while, but I want to hear your perspectives too. Your perspectives are important and valuable, and we all learn from each other. So don't be shy, and it's okay to take up space in here. I don't know if we're going to allow attendees to come on and talk. It kind of depends on how long it takes me to get through the content, so we'll just see. So definitely lean into the chat option, okay? So illness, disease, conditions, even injuries, any kind of health issue, either caused by or worsened by psychic attack, black magic, curse, ancestral curse, entity interference, dark forces interference in general, even psychotronic weaponry, which is a man-made, possibly from other beings, technology that can be used to wreak havoc on a human system. So there's a lot of different ways that the illness can be caused or contributed to. You might want to get a pen and paper, because I'm going to be covering a lot of little tidbits here, which is, again, forgive me, I am going to be looking at my notes quite a bit. Okay, so let's just break it down. Illness. When I say illness, I'm talking about any kind of health conditions at all. Could be anything. It could be anything from a skin condition to a heart condition to anything. Chronic illness, acute or life-threatening illness. Conditions or health issues that are genetic, that began at birth or pre-birth, or that developed later. Health issues that were not genetic, but were seemingly caused by exposure to pathogens, toxins, or even some kind of an accident. So that brings up a point here, is that sometimes it can appear that an issue is physically caused. Let's say there's a genetic test that shows that's why you have the illness. Or let's say you were exposed to some kind of toxins, mold, and you're dealing with mold toxicity, or some other pathogen of some kind, and that caused an illness, caused you to develop an illness. So it might seem like it's a physical cause, and that could be the case. But there are circumstances where there are lots of times where there are negative spiritual forces at play that actually arrange the accident or the exposure or the being put in the family line with that genetic issue. So it might seem like it's a mundane physical cause, and it very well could be, but there are times when it seems that way, but it's actually caused by negatives, or it's caused or nudged by negative spiritual forces. See if I've left anything out. Also, when we talk about illness, this could also include birth defects, developmental delays, even not just physical illness, but mental illness, behavior disorders. And when we talk about illness, the most acute effect of that would be death. Maybe. Okay, I'm thinking this out loud. I've actually gone through some of this. So the reason why I'm pausing, so I'm going to go on a little, hopefully interesting sidebar right now. I was having a very interesting conversation with a Catholic priest last week who is, I don't want to give too many details. I'll just say that I live in the United States. He is not from the United States. I just say that because I think it's relevant that he had a different perspective being from another country. So we chatted a little bit about illness, and he has had experience with it. He's had some experience with exorcism, and we were talking about illness, and I was sharing with him about a period of time that I went through where I was under spiritual attack and I was very ill, and it was physical torture. It was spiritual torture, spiritual, physical torture. And he chimed in and said, well, he was saying that that's intentional and it's because the dark forces are like, they will do that to a person. Instead of killing them, they will torture them in order to try to get that person who's being tortured to give up their devotion to God, divine goodness, whatever name you want to call it, to give up on that and to just be like, fine, I give in, and to give over to the dark forces, the demonic forces, whatever it is that you want to call them. And he's like, yeah, they will torture people, certain people, to get them to give themselves over. So that's why when I said, death is the most extreme version of this, some of us might feel like, yes, like death would be the worst version of illness caused by negative spiritual warfare. And that very well can be the case. However, coming in at a close second would be the ongoing torture, because that is a thing. And it's like there's a fine line between what is caused by an illness and what is caused by the negative spiritual activity. So has anyone, do you all want to say anything on the chat? Has anyone had any experience like that where they felt like there was like some torture going on? Okay. And then also question number 2. So let's get some discussion going. Question number 2, have you experienced any of those list of variety of kinds of illnesses, health condition, chronic illness, acute, life-threatening, genetic, from birth, developed later, exposure to pathogens, toxins, or an accident? Have you had experience with any of those where you suspected that there was something deeper going on? but maybe it wasn't just straight out physical causes. As I'm waiting for your answers, I also want to point out that things are not always so simple. Of course, things are complicated when it comes to illness, because many times there are roots of trauma that are woven in to the mix. And I'm not an expert on trauma, but I can say this, there's a lot of information coming out now, a lot of online summits, a lot of online content, a lot of online programs that you can sign up for that are teaching about healing trauma and about the connection between trauma, adverse childhood events, and trauma at any age, connecting with adulthood illnesses. So that gets thrown in the mix. But then also, what or who was the cause of the trauma? Like, was there any dark force interference that was causing the person to abuse you when you were a child? So it gets really complicated. So I'm not seeing any comments coming through. Sometimes that means there's something not going right with my own device. So let me just check. Give me a second. Nope, y'all are being super quiet. That's fine. As we go, let me know if you have any questions. Okay. All right. So I see some comments coming through. I will get to those in just a second. So illness caused by any type of negative spiritual interference. Number one, it can be caused by a mundane, quote, normal cause. They're really, truly, I believe, I've done a lot of thinking and studying about illness because there's a lot of illness that runs through my family. So I've had plenty of existential conversations with the divine about this. I really do believe that there are many instances where people just get sick. Okay. It is part of the human condition. It's not always a psychic attack. Sometimes this is how your body vessel has chosen to express. Sometimes it's our body giving us messages that we need to change something in our life. So it's not always that we're a victim. It's not always that something is coming at us. Sometimes it's our body's wisdom giving us messages that we need to heal something emotional, or that we need to heal something or change something about our lifestyle, or that we're not living in alignment with what's healthy for us. And so a lot of people who've gone through a major illness will come after they've healed it, will come back later and say, wow, this was a really important thing that happened to me because it woke me up. It caused me to see some things, some ways that I was not living in alignment. So this is an important aspect of illness. Sometimes it is a teacher, and sometimes it just is what it is. Sometimes this is the family line that we were born into, not because of a curse, but because this is what it's just what it is what it is. And so the family line that we're a part of happens to have, let's say, a lot of genetic conditions, a lot of illness. Mm-hmm. And also, it's important to point out that everyone dies. Everyone's body chooses how that's going to happen. So it can be through a disease, it can be peacefully in the night, it can be through an accident, a million ways. And that is also a normal part of our human condition, at least how humans are existing in this day and age. death is included as a part of the package, physical death. So illness, disease, death, that doesn't necessarily equate any nefarious causes. And so I just want to caution everybody. I think sometimes it can be easy to get into a fear loop where we're like, anytime we catch a cold, we go, oh no, someone was psychically attacking me. And I am of the belief that we need to be informed about the negative possibilities. And that's why we're here. That's what we're going to talk about. But we also need to maintain a balance and say, okay, what's really going on? Is this just my body trying to give me a message? Have I been ignoring my body's signals? Is the job that I'm working at not good for me and my body is complaining? Or, you know, any of those things. So next, I'm going to read some of your comments. And then after that, we're going to get into talking specifically about illnesses that are caused by or worsened by negative spiritual interference. Okay, so I got to put my granny glasses on in order to read your comments, because otherwise I totally cannot read them. Jamie L., thank you for sharing the resource. Okay, let's see here. Anne says, yes, 15 years ago, my family member experienced a very serious psychic attack that culminated in multiple exorcisms. In the early stages of her attack, she experienced multiple physical symptoms. Yes. Jamie L., in regard to the resource that he shared, it has a free training on self-healing from trauma and healing others too. Oh, that's great. Now, those who watch the replay won't be able to see that link. So Jamie L., if you would like to share that, if you feel like it, you can share that later also in the free Facebook group, because this is where we're at. Not, you are in the academy also. You could share it in the academy too if you want to, but if you want to share it for the group in the free Facebook group, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, they will all be able to see it later as well. Okay, if you want to. And let's see what we've got here. Linda says, I know 2 people who I believe were attacked, resulting in their death. One kept trying to tell us that for a couple of years. 2 weeks after I told him about your book, his experiences were very similar. He had a massive heart attack. I wish we'd known before. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That actually reminds me of something that I had written down in my notes that I kind of forgot to circle back to. And this is that, you know, I was going through the list of like what I mean by illness, all these different options, health conditions, chronic illness, acute or life-threatening, da 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 da. A couple of common acute health situations that I've seen happen to people who were blasted by black magic. Somebody was angry, somebody who was skilled at black magic blasted them. One person died of heart attack. The other person had an embolism and died. And so these things do happen. But I, as you may have noticed, I specified, you know, someone who is really skilled. So in this circumstance, this was someone who was in an old former community where I used to live, and this was someone who was very adept at esoteric occult practices and misusing those practices to harm others. So when she got super, super angry with someone, she blasted him and he died. Now, in my observation, just to help you not be so freaked out by this, in my observation, I run into a lot of people who are dabblers of magic, And most of them did not have anywhere close to the ability or the knowledge to actually make someone die. Like, really, the most that they were able to do was like wreak a little bit of havoc, like cause a few things to break down, in the electronics or something like that. Most people don't have that level of knowledge. There are plenty of people on the planet who do, but the likelihood that you are mixing and mingling with them is pretty low, although it depends on what kind of people you're hanging out with. So don't want you to leave this class thinking, oh my God, someone's got some like random person on the internet is going to send something and cause a heart attack. That's not very likely, but it does happen. And I've known people that happened too. A lot more of what I see, a big percentage of what I see, what I've seen over the years in working with clients who've been dealing with psychic attack, spiritual warfare, have been people dealing with more chronic, like they're languishing for a long time with chronic symptoms because whatever aspect of the dark forces is trying to keep them down. So let's read another comment and then we'll get more into that. Okay. Lee says, I have had to struggle with addictions. Okay, I'm so glad. I'm so sorry that you've been dealing with addictions, and I'm very glad that you've brought this up because this is it's an illness. I've done classes before. I think like 2 years ago, I did a class on addictions and psychic protection issues, addictions caused by or worsened by entities, dark forces, etc. And is very much tied in a very similar way to what we're talking about with illness. So I'm going to read the rest of your comment if I can get my glasses on. Lee says, I have had to struggle with addictions. I was sober over 12 years. Then I was studying mediumship, etc. It relapsed, and I believe there was psychic attack at this church. Happened in 1996 through 1999. I got sober again in 2006. I did not do occult or mystic practices, just 12-step work. I do feel in the last few years that somehow I am getting some interference, etc. Just seems like this year my good path was blocked and thought I had serious health issues, but I do not. I feel like I have to keep fighting the negativity only to get overwhelmed. Now I am suspecting someone who I've known all my life, but has been jealous. I have to be careful about where I point the finger. Yeah. For anyone who's interested in negative spiritual interference relating to addictions, I would recommend that later you go to YouTube and you can type in my name, Mayazahira, and addictions or addiction, and you'll find some information. You'll find the past video that I did on that, and hopefully you'll find that helpful. Okay, so now let's go on. This is one of the reasons why it's so good that we have a group here, because sometimes I don't think to include everything that is important for us to touch on. And it seems like whenever there's anything that I've left out, you all are so wonderful in bringing up those subjects and tying those in. So thank you for that. Okay, illness caused by or worsened by spiritual interference. So all these different aspects of illness. Let's talk about the list of different kinds of negative spiritual interference that can cause or contribute to illness. So psychic attack. This is where somebody is sending negative energy your way. Psychic attack is kind of an umbrella term for anytime anyone is sending negative energy your way. It can be like evil eye is one term where somebody is jealous. It's not really that they're doing any black magic or spell work. It's that they're just sending a lot of negative thoughts, jealous thoughts, and that has energy, right? So if someone is sending evil eye, psychic attack, any kind of negative spell work, black magic, any occult practices that are intended to harm the person. And this can be done by, whoever it is in your life, or they can hire a dark practitioner of whatever form of magic that they might be practicing. Those are all some ways that a person or people can be psychically attacking and causing an illness to the targeted person. But then we also need to mention, oh my goodness, my cat, you guys. Okay, my cat is hanging on the curtain and he's stuck because his claw is in the curtain. So we're going to take like a little break, go get some water, and I have to rescue my cat. And oh no, he's fine now. Whatever. All right, I'm glad you fixed the problem, little kid. That was pretty funny. I wish you guys could have seen it. Okay, so not only can illnesses be caused or contributed by a person sending black magic, Santeria, voodoo, hoodoo, the whole shebang, any of those things, but also illness can be caused by interference by one or more entities. So if a person is dealing with entity harassment, if they are living in a house where there's paranormal interference, if there's a portal in their house and there's stuff coming through. So if there's an issue with the house, but the people are being affected, you might notice if the family is living in a house that's haunted, that has paranormal interference, oftentimes there's one person that's more targeted, and it's because their health, they just have a tendency to have more fragile health, and then the others might be less affected. So not everybody will necessarily get sick, although it's possible. So that's an issue where the location is the problem. But then a lot of times a person has an entity, one or more entities hanging out in their energy field, hooked in via energy cords, or even entering into the person and causing damage. These can be any kind of negative entities. Oh, hey, you guys want an appearance by the goofball? Hi. Magical goofball. All right, let me get back on track. That was for all you animal lovers out there. So, okay, let me get a drink and we'll get back on track. All right. So when there's an entity in the mix, it can be any kind of, it can be any number of entities. A human soul that is on the dark end of the spectrum, can be a demon, can be a jinn. Linda says, I love bad kitties. Yeah, he's bad in a hilarious way. He gets caught, he gets into all sorts of like he'll be hanging somewhere. I have to go rescue him. So we have evil human souls, demons, jinn, which is spelled DJINN or JIN or JINN. You can, I'm not going to go into a description of them today, but I do have a video about them, so you can look that up. Maya Zahira, look on YouTube, Maya Zahira, DJINN, and you'll find out about what they are. And then there are just so many different other kinds of entities that might be in a person's field that are either siphoning life force energy. So that's one thing that can happen. Like they are draining the person's life force energy so they can feed on it. And by the way, a person might be doing that too. They might not just be sending attack, they might be siphoning the person's energy because so that they can obtain more power. But an entity can do that as well. So siphoning life force energy or attacking the person. And the most common reasons for an entity, any aspect of the dark forces, attacking a person in order to cause illness, the most common reasons for that are, number one, to cause the person to suffer, because the negative forces in general like suffering. They like, that's like candy to them. They can feed off of that energy of suffering. So they will cause physical illness in order to create suffering. And the second thing is to weaken the person and make it harder for that person to fulfill their soul mission. So those are a couple of possibilities there. One thing that I've noticed, just on a side note, with some colleagues that I've spoken to, psychic protection colleagues, looking at my own situations and then looking at client situations, there are many situations where it seems like it just seems like there's some kind of law or something blocking the negative forces from actually killing the person. Now, as we've mentioned, sometimes people do die, but I've noticed a lot of times, like it seems like the person is being protected. So like the dark forces are not allowed to kill, like fully take the person out, but they're just causing them to suffer, just causing them to suffer. Because if they could kill the person, then they would have already. This was another thing that the Catholic priest and I were talking about last week, was that this phenomenon where it seems like a lot of people are like languishing with chronic illness, and that if the demonic or dark forces could get away with killing the person, they would, but they can't. Otherwise, like if they could do it, they would have already. And so we were both in agreement on that. Okay, so another aspect of negative spiritual interference that can cause or worsen an illness would be ancestral curses. So there are a variety of ways that the energy of an ancestral line can get mucked up. Either a member of the family can be the reason why the energy is screwed up in the family line, or some type of dark force came in and started messing with the ancestral line, and many of the ancestors are being negatively affected. And when there's an ancestral curse, it doesn't always result in illness. It can result in, any kind of reoccurring issue where like people in the family line experience homelessness over and over again, or extreme poverty, or chronic psychic attack situations. Like the list goes on and on. Today we're talking about illness. So there are illnesses that can be passed not just genetically, but there's a spiritual element to it too, where either the illness or condition is passed through either a curse through the family line or some type of dark forces interference. And not just dark forces interference, but sometimes in the mix of the ancestral problems are family beliefs or patterns. Like, for example, there's a common belief in some ancestral lines that it's like this attachment to suffering, that suffering makes you a good person and you'll go to heaven and be with Jesus if you suffer. And that family belief, it's like a program, it's like a computer program that's so ingrained into the ancestry that it's almost like a curse, really, on the family line. So whatever the belief is, whether it's the over glorification of suffering or whatever the belief is, it can be very problematic. Okay, let's see what comments we have. And then after that, I'm going to get into red flags. Yeah. Slurp. I think we have a couple of comments here. Jamie L says, I read in a book that Satan, basically all dark forces, are not exempt from karma and its laws. Is that true, Maya? Maybe they don't kill us directly because they would be very bad. It would be very bad karma for them. Oh, I'm just smiling because you and I both, I think, spend a lot of time pondering the existential questions. we talk about some of those in our closed unit of our academy group, right? So I don't think I want to take a lot of time to go into the existential question of do demons or does Satan have to deal with karma, the laws of karma? But I will say this, based on my observation, it seems like there are certain cosmic laws at play. Just as I've watched things through my own life situations and clients and etc. It seems, for example, it seems like there are certain people that the dark forces really hate, and they would like that person to die, but they can't do it. Like if they could, they would. So there's some, I think it has, to me, it seems like it has less to do with like them being afraid of the bad karma and more with certain cosmic laws being upheld, that they are not allowed to cross certain lines. Now, that's just my feeling. I don't claim to have the ultimate answers on all of the existential questions, but believe me, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that one for sure. Great comment. Okay, so as we are looking at these issues, because today's class is really about understanding what this is. So as we look at illness caused by or worsened by any type of negative spiritual interference, let's talk about possible red flags. And the tricky part is we don't have anything that is absolute with this, because there's just so many different scenarios. So possible, emphasizing the word possible for red flags. We have a naughty cat happening. Hey. Okay, sorry guys. Red flags. We've got a list of 5. Now, before I say this, I'm going to preface it by saying that these could be red flags for negative spiritual interference, but these things could also be caused by trauma. Trauma can also act in some of these ways. Like, oh, my statues just got knocked down over there. All right. It's like they know. It's like they know when we're not wanting to be disturbed. Okay, furry children. So a lot of times trauma can act in similar ways. Number one, a red flag that it could possibly be interference by some kind of negative force would be that your medical team can't pinpoint the cause. You've got these symptoms or this weird thing going on, and your medical support is like, we can't figure out what's wrong with you. So as you can imagine, like I said, sometimes trauma can do complicated things in the body to where it's very hard to diagnose, or it can just be a rare illness and the medical team doesn't know how to diagnose that illness. Okay, so it can be mundane causes or it can be negative spiritual. But this is one thing to look out for, is if it's this like mystery illness and they can't pinpoint the cause. Number two, possible red flag, is that the illness eludes treatment. So they say, oh, we have, like, this is the illness that you're dealing with. Here's the treatment, whether it's allopathic or a natural or holistic, whatever. Oh, this works on everybody. But yet, as soon as you start to do it, it's like it doesn't work. It just eludes treatment. Number three, red flag, if you have the illness symptoms, and then you also, on top of that, are having symptoms of psychic attack, of negative spiritual interference. You're having indications of paranormal activity, like weird lights flashing in your house, stuff moving around, maybe having nightmares, people in the household feeling like something is grabbing them while they're sleeping. There's a whole list of symptoms in my first book, very comprehensive list. My first book is Darkness Disguised as Light. I'm not going to go into all of those symptoms right now, but that's a pretty obvious indicator. If you're having other symptoms that are actually signs of psychic attack or paranormal activity, plus you're dealing with this illness, it could be related. Okay. Number four, possible red flag. I want you to consider what was happening in your life around the onset of the illness. What was happening around in your life around the onset of the illness? Was there like some conflict with someone? Somebody was angry with you? Or another important reason for asking this question is that the illness could be caused by or contributed by trauma or stress. So maybe there was a traumatic event that happened, and that was what happened. That trauma was the way, was your body responded to the trauma by developing the illness. Okay, but you want to ask yourself that question to help you evaluate: is this trauma-based? Was this about a life event, or was there some kind of negative energy being sent my way? And number five, possible red flag: when you are going through the experience of the illness, does it feel to you like, do you get this feeling like you're being spiritually tortured? Like, does it feel like torture? Because even if the doctors are saying that it's a this is a normal symptom of whatever illness that you're dealing with, I would say trust your gut. If you're like, I seriously feel like I'm being tortured, like it feels like spiritual torture, it feels like physical torture, spiritual torture, mental torture, then trust your gut on that. Okay. Trust what your feeling is. Okay. I've got a couple of solutions to go over. Obviously, so as you know, the free classes are not usually heavily focused on solutions, more about identifying the problems. And then in my 12-month Spiritual Empowerment Academy. That's where we really get into the solutions and solving everything. But I don't like to leave you high and dry, talk about these like big hairy problems and then not have anything to go with. So I'll talk about a couple of like basic approaches. So we're almost ready to wrap up. So if you have something that you really want to share, start typing. Okay, Laura brings up a really important point. This is relevant. It's so relevant because it's often very complicated. It's not just illness, or it's not just psychic attack, or it's not just trauma, or oftentimes it's very interwoven. Because Laura says the trauma was caused by people who were infested by evil. So absolutely, trauma can be at the root of an illness, but the people who caused the trauma were infested by evil. So there was dark forces interference. So it can get kind of complicated there. Okay. So I hope you're taking notes. Before I get into a couple of really basic solutions, I want to just give a reminder. I just feel like those of you who are here on the live Zoom class right now probably don't need to hear this because I think we're all on a very similar wavelength. But this is just for anybody out there watching the replay anywhere in the world who might lean towards this common popular belief system. And so I want to just point this out. So, of course, our focus today is on illness and disease caused by or contributed by negative spiritual forces. And we're identifying, really how people are victimized by this. So there's no illness shaming whatsoever that's been happening here. But I want to point out that in the New Age world, in the popular spirituality world, that the ideas of illness shaming are just so prevalent. And it's like the illness shaming ideas have seeped in to the point that people don't even realize that they're doing it, and they don't even realize what they're saying. And so I just want to take a moment and acknowledge how prevalent illness shaming is within spiritual teachings. An example would be the spiritual concept that those who are high vibration don't get illness, which is false, by the way. And those who are low vibe will get sick. And that I've seen memes going around where it says like, illness cannot exist within a high vibration. Illness cannot exist within a high vibration. I grind my teeth when I see those memes. And then I see a whole bunch of people going, oh, yes, that's absolutely true. And then I'm like, yeah, but what about all the people in the world having a human experience of chronic or severe or acute illness, where they're being told that illness cannot exist in a high vibration? And the people who are dealing with the illness actually are very good, beautiful people. And they're being told that, well, illness can't exist within a high vibration. Therefore, you must be at a low vibration. If you would just raise your vibration, you wouldn't be sick anymore. And that is just the worst bullshit ever. So I think that's all I'm going to say about that, because I could go into a whole rant. I seriously hate, yes, I'm using that word on purpose. I hate the illness shaming bullshit. I'll say one more thing. About 5 or 7 years ago, old friend of mine, we were talking about psychic attack and spiritual warfare stuff. And she said something like, well, so and so, because there was someone who was working with a lot of false light, and we had an experience with this person, so we knew that they were channeling a lot of false light entities. And this old friend said something like, well, she has these autoimmune illnesses and it's because of all of her entities and da da da. And I was like, stop that shit right now. We're not going to be shaming someone and being like, well, they're sick because they have entities or whatever. That's bullshit. There are all sorts of people that get autoimmune illnesses that don't have entity issues. You know, right now in this period of humanity, illness is a common phenomenon that happens with the physical system. It just is. There are some who are blessed to have great genes and they don't ever get sick, but they might have other issues. So let's put the bullshit judging away. Okay, like I said, I get very, oh, I hate that stuff so much. Okay, so I wanted to just make a mention of that, just that we need to be aware of illness shaming and to just keep it in check and recognize how common it is within spiritual teachings. Okay, so we've got some comments that came through. Jamie L says, how about all of the quote enlightened folk who died from cancer or other forms of illness or just death? Like they died. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I was raised Catholic, and there are lots of stories of saints who had like all of these documented miracles, and they could heal. They would they just had like all of these amazing things, light emanating around them. They could bilocate, be in more than one place at once. They would levitate. I mean, so and this is just Catholic saints. I mean, there's saints in other traditions as well. But I was raised with those stories, and many of those saints suffered from very difficult illnesses. So we could get into a whole existential question about why is that? You know, so if high vibe means you don't get sick, how come all these high vibe people were very sick? They suffered a lot. I'm not going to say that I have the answer for that, but that's just to throw that out there, you guys. Anne says, this is so true. It is false that psychic illness cannot exist, that any kind of illness cannot exist in high vibration environment. Thank you, Maya. Saliv says, that's an example of ableism. Right on. Laura says, the strength it takes, the ability to cope and live through a chronic illness is so far beyond what the high vibers can imagine. They have no idea. I agree. I think, like, I'm not going to try to speak for others. I'll speak for myself in saying that the stuff that I went through physically, I think would have caused a lot of people to have a mental break. And so these like ungrounded, shallow, high vibers, yeah, it's going to make you very strong for sure. Laura says, amazing that those saints weren't branded witches instead of saints. Yeah, that's interesting. Lee says, Wayne Dyer died of cancer. Yeah. And I don't know if that's for sure. I thought that he had cancer and was supposedly healed of it, and then later on died of a heart attack. But don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But it doesn't matter to me. But I just, in case anyone watches the replay and wants to correct, or if you have the correct information on the replay, anyone want to make a comment, that's totally fine. But yeah, long story short, though, he did die. He didn't live forever, and he got sick. For those of you who don't know, Wayne Dyer was a very, very popular spiritual author and thought leader, and had all sorts of. He wrote a lot of good. He did a lot of good, and he got cancer and he suffered. So what's that about, right? Okay. All right. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, we're going to get into solutions. A couple of basic solutions, starting points. Before we do that, I want to remind everybody that, and I just saw a comment. Louise Hay, similar, very popular New Age, New Thought author, and who she lived into old age, but she did die. She didn't live forever. Saliv says, and why would dying of old age be more righteous than dying of cancer or dying younger? Linus Pauling died of cancer, but living into his 90s greatly helped humanity. Yeah. Great discussion, you guys. Okay, so just a reminder that last month's free class, I talked about can a child be promised to the dark forces? That was a really important discussion. If you are in my Spiritual Empowerment Academy, you still have ongoing access to all of the past classes. But if you're watching the replay on YouTube or wherever of last month's class, you have access to the first half of Can a Child Be Promised to the Dark Forces? And then you can access the second half by paying a small fee and signing up for the video vault. I just bring that up because can a child be promised to the dark forces? That can also relate to today's topic. If they're promised to the dark forces, can it lead to the child developing illness? Can it lead to the child growing into adulthood, experiencing ongoing chronic illness and physical torture? So if you haven't watched that class, if it's of interest to you, I encourage you to go back and watch it. And let's talk about a couple of quick solutions to start with. So if you or someone that you care about is dealing with illness that you suspect could have some possible causes from negative spiritual interference, I tend to be someone who has a very balanced approach in a lot of things. So here's my advice. Now, I always give this disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just general spiritual advice. I would recommend a combination of health protocols. So it's like, I would recommend a combination of physical health protocols. So number one, starting with the physical. Every single one of you watching this is unique. Physical health approach might be allopathic medicine for you. It might be holistic. It might be nutritional. It might be supplements. It might be whatever other kind of therapies or a combination thereof. But a combination of whatever health protocols you and your practitioner feel are right for you. That's number one. Focus on that. Even if you are convinced that this is 100% caused by an entity or a demonic force or a family curse, whatever, that may be true, but your body still needs support in the here and now. Okay. So I would suggest number one, health protocols. Number two, again, even though this very well could be coming from spiritual causes, number two, you need to address emotional and trauma healing. And that can be working with a therapist. It can be doing shadow work. It can be working with any of the resources online that are focused on healing trauma, because trauma can wreak havoc on the body. There's actually a summit that I watched, was it last month or the month before, called the biology of trauma, and you could Google that just so you could, if you're not sure where to start, you don't know what I'm talking about with the connection between illness and trauma, look that up and just see what it says, and maybe that will give you some ideas. So that's number 2. And then number 3, last but not least, focus on spiritual clearing, repair, prayer. Prayer and self-healing work are things that you can do for yourself. Daily prayer, daily prayer, daily prayer, whatever your spiritual belief system is. Daily prayer. But then you can also work with energy healers, spiritual healers, shamans. Just as you know, I always recommend that you fully vet any healers that you work with. Unfortunately, not all of them have your best interest at heart. Just because they say they're a healer doesn't mean that they're not a predator. I'm writing about that in my 3rd book right now. So follow your gut. Don't work with just anybody, but if you're dealing with serious illness, you might consider that you can't do it all alone. You can't do all the spiritual heavy lifting alone. So consider working with one or more healers. One place that you could start is ask your friends if there's anyone that they recommend, because if they have had a good experience with that person, then that's a good sign. Okay. So number 1, physical approach. Number 2, emotional and trauma healing. Number 3, focus on spiritual clearing, spiritual cleansing, energy healing, etc. The spiritual clearing, spiritual cleansing part of it, you can get a lot of you could get a lot of your starting point on this in my 2nd book, the Psychicattack Sourcebook, and that's on Amazon and Audible. And also reading this book will help you even more understand all the different things that could be contributing to illness, because there's a lot that we didn't talk about today. Okay, so we've got a few more comments and then we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Remember, if you want more information on working with me, or you just want to check things out, see what else I have to offer, you can go to my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, click on Work with Maya, or just explore the website, see what you can find. There's even a blog on there too. Saliv says, I came in late and missed much of this video, but I've theorized some of us with thyroid issues were hung in past lives. You bring up a really important issue that we didn't talk about today, which is that past life issues can also contribute to illnesses. That's kind of like a whole other rabbit hole. And like I was saying earlier, you guys, if there's anything that I've ever left out of my notes that's super relevant and that needs to be mentioned, you guys always end up mentioning it. So that is very cool. Thank you for that. Jamie L says, trauma healing gets to the root of many things. Laura says, makes me think of Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace. And yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll just close by just giving the reminder that right now our schedule for our free classes is once a month, first Tuesday of the month at 5:30 Pacific, and adjust for your time zone wherever you are, anywhere in the world. And the members of our Facebook group, Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group, have the ability to watch the replay for about a week after we have the Zoom class. We then post it up into the group, and then you have access to it. So if there's times when you can't join us live, or you want to rewatch and take notes or anything, you have free access for a week. And then after that, it goes into my Maya Zahira's video vault. That's like a little small membership program. So, and then also remember, you can find part of the replay on the YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody. I've been thinking about what topic I want to talk about next month. So this is October. Oh yeah, October, it's my birthday month. Spiritual Empowerment Academy is open for the rest of this month. But November, I was kind of thinking about doing a rant about another rant about why I've broken up with New Age. I talked about this about 3 years ago, and I was thinking about, I'm feeling like I want to rant about it again. But if you guys have any other requests of what you'd like for me to talk about, then feel free to share it in our Facebook group or wherever you're watching the replay, share it in the comments, and I will definitely consider it as a topic. Thank you, everybody. Sending you many, many blessings, and I will see you next time. Thanks.